Karin Hadadan. Thank you so much for being on the Woo Report. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you.
You are an author, you're a poet, you moonlight as an advertising creative, which is like, this is a fun fact I just found out about you via Instagram. I love that so much. And you're a screenwriter. So if you want to feel inspired, if you want an exhale during your scrolling on Instagram, you are it. You are the follow. So thank you for your words. I'm so honored to have you here.
There's so many Instagram accounts. I'm so glad that mine feels like an exhale. That was always my intention. Was like I don't want people to follow me and it be more noise, more information, something else you scroll by. Like I want it to be a place where people come, they feel at peace, they feel present, they feel hopeful, positive, all of those things. So I'm just so grateful that you described it in that way.
Well, that's exactly how I feel. And I like love diving into all of your writings. I mean, you have two books, you have a Substack, and then you tailor it in these tiny little beautiful moments on Instagram. And honestly, to me, they feel so resonant for our time, for a female in our time. And you're so honest about the highs and the lows.
I will say the past month and a half has been like a spiritual roller coaster, but I feel like I've done this stance so many times that I'm like, okay, this isn't darkness. Like this, there's just so much light ready to come in. Like, let me just go through this. And it still feels magical. Like it's like just the expansion, even like the heaviness in my heart. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so human that I'm feeling all of this.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
It's already so good. It's already so good. Oh my gosh. Okay. So what I did is I gathered a few of my favorites and I'd love to just get into them a little bit deeper with you. And these have become soul whispers to me. And the first one, and I heard you say that this went viral 5 times, your quantum leap quote.
Yeah. I know it's crazy.
Because it is so good. And if it's okay with you, I want to read it for our listeners.
Okay.
This is called Quantum Leap. What if I told you that the reason why you want certain things so deeply is because it's already yours at some point on the timeline? Your future self is whispering to you through intuitive feelings, dreams planted deep within, and crystal clear visions. Those desires are not just wants. They are previews of what's already yours on the timeline of your life. Embody them in this present moment, for they are the breadcrumbs leading you to the manifestation of your destiny.
Yeah. Sometimes when people read me my own words, I'm like, I wrote that.
It's so good. And can I tell you that I read this when I was first starting the Woo Report? And, I have been a producer in Hollywood. I have worked with every celebrity under the book. And I'm like doing my own podcast. And I was like, why should I do my own podcast? I can't do this. And this transformed my imposter syndrome.
Oh my God, I have chills hearing that.
It's just like, in all of the self-doubt moments, I come back to this because it's something that I wanted so bad. I want it so badly. I want to do it. And without this platform, I also wouldn't be able to be talking to you. So it's so incredible. So talk me through, like, how did you write this? Like, do you remember writing this? Did you channel it? How did this come to you?
So this is in my second book, but I wrote this, I think I want to say like 6 months before I started actually writing my second book. So it was honestly just something I wrote, posted on Instagram. It got like pretty good traction at the time. And then when I was actually writing my second book, I wanted to include this passage in there. And I'm so glad I did. The reason why I wrote this was because I was deep in my healing journey from chronic illness. And I knew deep down that that wasn't going to be the rest of my life. Like I knew I was suffering really deeply and greatly, and there was a lot of chronic pain, a lot of emotional pain. But I always held on to this vision for this future of like, there is a healed version of myself existing at some point on the timeline. I'm not there yet, but I'm walking myself there. I will arrive there at some point. And so that was kind of the focus and the lens that I was like writing that through. And then I started to think about my entire life, how all of the past desires I had when I was a teenager, when I was in college, in my 20s, over the years, they manifested into my reality. So when I was 16, I wanted to be an author. Like that's something I wrote on my bucket list. And then when I was 25, I was an author. I was published. And then it was like I always wanted to live on my own in a beautiful white marble spacious apartment, and like I'm living there now. And then it was like when I was in high school, I wanted to live in New York City and go to college in New York and work in fashion, and then I did those things. So it was kind of like, wait a minute. If all of my desires that I've had in my life that were meant for me, let me clarify that. Obviously, we all have desires that aren't always coming from an authentic place. All of the desires where my soul was calling me, not like desires from my mind or my ego, but something coming deep within from my heart and my soul, they all manifested. Not on my own timing, but in God's divine perfect timing. So then it got me questioning, like, well, if I've done this dance before, what makes me think that any new desire I have also doesn't exist? Of course it exists, but it's up to me in this present moment to take the right next step, to follow those breadcrumbs, to listen to those intuitive nudges, and eventually that will lead me to the moment and lead me to my destiny. And the reason why this passage means so much to me, and I'm so grateful out of like every passage or piece I've ever written, I'm so glad that this is the one that has reached the most amount of people, is because I want everyone to remember like how powerful they are, and that their souls came here to live an extraordinary existence, to do and create something beautiful. And so I want people to truly remember that anything is possible for them, and that whatever dream they have in their heart is also part of the higher plan.
I was going to ask you this later, but I feel like I'm going to ask you now, because in your writings and whenever you talk about any of spirituality, you talk about God. And I see you wearing a cross. And I'm wondering like what the intersect of religion and spirituality is for you. And like I grew up Methodist, and I grew up always believing in God and something bigger than myself. And then, I got run over by a car, and I had this big spiritual awakening. This is my crack open moment. And then it kind of shifted how I see God. But now I'm kind of coming back to praying again to God. And honestly, your writings are a big part of that. And I've also been like looking into Kabbalah, which is like a whole nother thing, but they talk about the creator and God and the creator and praying. And so it's become kind of like a new practice again. But I don't know, can you help me understand how it intersects for you?
Yeah, I think it's a really individual journey, right? And so this is what it means to me, but it looks differently for everyone. And I also recently got into Kabbalah, which has transformed my faith and my relationship with God and allowed me to see things from a completely different lens. But I'll kind of go back to just kind of describing my journey with my faith. So I grew up Armenian. I am Armenian. And so we're Christian. And so I grew up going to church on Sundays. I did Bible study. I went to Armenian camps where faith was really rooted in that. But I feel like I never really had a relationship with God. And my dad always told me, like, God is in your heart. You don't have to go to church to, feel his presence. It's where you are, right? It's your inner faith, your heart. And I love that my dad taught me that at a young age, because ironically, although I loved going to church and I loved hearing the pastor speak, and I loved being in that energy, I always felt kind of disconnected a little bit. But then it was really my journey through chronic illness that got me into the world of spirituality, not specifically religion. So when I was a teenager, I had a lot of gut issues, and that kind of just allowed me to take the reins in my own hands because Western medicine was failing me. And that's really how I got into the world of mindfulness and spirituality. And when I started to meditate, and when I started to read the Joe Dispenzas and the Eckhart Tolles of the world, and that was kind of my journey in my early 20s. That's what got me into spirituality. And when I started to meditate every day doing Joe Dispenza, that's when I started to really tap into my own soul. That's when I saw these really big visions that were kind of previews of my life. I mean, the vision the idea of my first and second book and the screenplay came to me in meditation before the reality had been created, right? And so there was this relationship with my soul all those years. But honestly, it was when I was at a rock bottom in my health about 2.5 years ago, where I felt like I was solely depending on myself. Not that I wasn't praying to God, but I wasn't praying from wholeness. I wasn't praying from faith. I was praying from like I need something, like I needed something, or I just was like clutching onto control. Like it wasn't coming from this pure place. And I think that once I hit the rock bottom, I realized how I had been depending on myself to heal, depending on myself to, have the miracle. And that was when I really just started to pray differently. I stopped praying for things. I stopped praying for healing, and I really just prayed for guidance. I prayed for strength. I prayed for support. And from that point on, my relationship with God just got so much deeper because it became this sacred language between him and me. My second book, to be honest, was me channeling God's voice for myself before I even knew I needed this wisdom. Like when I would be writing the second book, I would sit down, I would pray, God, please speak through me. And then my fingers would fly across the keyboard, and then I would reread what I wrote. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like,
Wow.
I'm not this wise. I'm not this smart. Like, where did this come from? And it really was me being a vessel and a channel for God's divine light. And then once I finished writing the book, I'm like, well, obviously God chose me to share this gift because I have the experiences and I have the wisdom to marry the two. But I will say for me now, to me, it's like, it's not even an intersection, because to me, it's one. Like it's magic, it's divinity, it all in one. And whether that means, spiritually or religiously, to me, the source is the same, which is God. It's the divine creator, it's source. And so I have my spiritual practices, which is the meditation, the breath works, the journaling, all those things. But then prayer is my most important tool, because I'm praying every day, all throughout the day. Like even if something triggers me, I'm like going back to Kabbalah, pause, what a pleasure. Thank you, God, for revealing this trigger. Thank you for transforming this pain. And then it's like when something beautiful happens, I look up and I'm like, oh my God, this is you. And then it's also this co-creation, right? So I feel like spiritually, or like the spiritual tools allow me to remember and access the power within me. But the manifestation of that is really co-creation with God and his timing, his will, his plan. I don't know if that answers it, but I think what I've kind of arrived at now is that it's not really an intersection. It's really the same thing, just different labels. And ultimately it's the same source, which for me is God.
I love all of that. Do you feel like, so with your family, are you still going to church?
Yeah. And ironically now when I go, it feels different, because it's like I know that God is with me wherever I am. So when I'm in church, I now feel his presence, because I now understand his eternal presence. I think when I was younger, I thought you had to go to church to feel God, whereas now it's like I feel God everywhere, and church is one of those locations as well. And for me, like the Armenian church specifically, there's a lot of senses that it activates: the smell, the sound, the aura, the energy. So now I really do feel like a stronger presence there, but it's not the only place where I feel connected. It's one of them.
I love that so much. Yes. I've been doing that too, like just praying all day long.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what I used to do as a kid. I think as a kid, I used to do that. And then I kind of stopped in LA for so long. I feel like the hustle. I was like just in this other weird spiral. And now I feel like I'm coming back to it, and it feels so good. But I know that God also can be like like that word can be like a turn off for people. And so I like to kind of get into what it means for everyone. But I think you're right that it means something different for everyone. One thing that you wrote about that I love, and you write about this a lot, you've had multiple spiritual awakenings. And I love this because I define my spiritual awakening as this accident that happened where I separated from my body and I saw myself laying above.
Wow.
But I have felt like the person that I was, even when I first found spirituality, into where I am now, I feel like has expanded so much. So would you be able to talk a little bit about like your many spiritual awakenings? I'm curious if they all come from these kind of crack open moments, or they all come from trauma, or maybe is it like a flare up of the chronic illness?
I want to prove this wrong one day, but I hope that spiritual awakenings don't always come from a traumatic, painful place. Something that I do believe is that wisdom can come from peace, and I've experienced that. I'm sure we all have experienced that where we're having a beautiful, joyful moment, and like that's when the download comes, or that's when the aha moment comes. So we've all danced with that. For me, though, it was really the chronic illness. And I think I kind of had this first spiritual awakening probably in my early 20s without having the language to describe it. But it was like rock bottom in my health, didn't know where to go. So I went inwards. And that's what kind of kickstarted this whole journey. But the moment kind of like my, car accident in your terms was really in October of 2023. This was 6 months post operation because I had endometriosis. I had all these hormonal gut issues, chronic acne, all these things all throughout my 20s. I never understood the root cause of it. And then in like 2023, I developed so much pelvic pain. And then I discovered I had endometriosis. I had surgery. And in my mind, it was like, oh my gosh, I have the surgery. My best life begins. And God hears our plans and laughs. And so I had surgery in May of 2023, and I was feeling a bit better a month out. And then that summer, all of my pain came back. And that's when there was a huge war on my consciousness, because at this point, I had known so much about, your thoughts create your reality, and, your emotions can cause physical pain. So a lot of it was also destruction is the best way I would describe it. Like I was so angry with myself, so frustrated because I believed like I'm doing this to myself, like I'm making myself more sick. And then that compounds the pain, right? The physical pain.
Totally. Yeah.
And so in October of 2023, I really hit a rock bottom where I had done everything. I had done the breath works. I had done the spiritual tools, the meditations, the journaling, the this, that. And I just like couldn't bear it anymore. And there was a day where I was begging on my knees, and I was like looking around my apartment, and I was like looking at the apartment that I bought, and I was looking at the clothes in my wardrobe and the jewelry and the furniture and the books that I wrote, like the book that I wrote, and all of the beautiful blessings in my life. And I remember just going down on my knees and saying, God, take it all away. I don't want any of this anymore. I just want health. I just want radiant health. And I was kind of like, I don't want to live like this anymore, because this to me isn't life, where every day I wake up dreading the day. I feel so much pain, not just physically, but my soul was so exhausted of just fighting every day. And I just was ready to give up. Like, not that I would have, like I don't have that much. It was one of those just like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And that was the ultimate surrender I've ever experienced. And I think with the spiritual awakening, you come to a place where you just are so sick of your own shit and living the way that you're living, and you realize that you can't do it yourself. Like, you need to just let go of everything. And that's when the clarity comes. And ironically, it was after that moment where I just began writing my second book. I kind of had this stubbornness inside of me, which I'm so grateful for, which was like, I will not be going through this without a deeper purpose. Like, I'm going to make something beautiful out of this. And that was my only hope, was I am not going through this pain. And this is where like reading the Bible again was so helpful, because these are the things that God promises, right? Is like, I will always turn something good out of something painful. You may not understand now, but someday you will. And, do not fear, like all of these truths. And so for me, it was that spiritual awakening that elevated me a little bit more consciously. And then you arrive there and you're like, I'm good. I'm here. I'm alive, yada, yada, yada. And then it was like another spiritual awakening a year later, where after I published my second book, I still felt these limiting fears and these limiting doubts of like, I'm a little bit better physically, but like, why am I not healed yet? What am I not getting? And then it was no longer just my health that was the mirror or the vehicle for suffering. It was toxic relationships. It was an unfulfilling job experience. It was me not understanding why my work isn't being seen. It was like all of these things. And then I did deeper work. And then I kind of arrived at this conclusion literally 2 months ago, where I finally unraveled the root of my suffering of like, why did I have chronic illness? That was like the $1,000,000 question. Why? I knew it happened for a reason, but why? Like, what was the underlying fear there? And then I discovered it was this fear of being seen and this fear of I'm too much, or this I am statement of I am too much. And so what did my body do? It kept me safe all those years. It prevented me from being seen, because when I was sick, I would hide, I would isolate. And then it was like, because I'm so deep and spiritual and, woo woo and all these different things, I felt like I was too much. And so I attracted men who made me feel that way. I attracted job opportunities that made me feel that way. And I attracted all these things. And so the spiritual awakening started probably one of them early in my 20s that brought me onto this journey. It really kind of catalyzed in October of 2023. And then it happened again a couple months ago, where that was like the massive aha moment. And now I'm in a place where I'm kind of having a completely different spiritual awakening, but it's less of receiving information, but more so remembering what I already know. And I think that's kind of the spiritual awakening journey, where is like, you first awaken, and this is how I've structured my book, which is you first awaken yourself, then you understand yourself, and then you honor yourself. And that's a lot of like self-forgiveness, self-compassion, grace. And then you free yourself from the stories, the patterns, the behaviors, the beliefs, and then you become the self. But even when you arrive there, when you become your authentic self, you still go through that process again, because you still have triggers. And then anytime you elevate more, you have to, you need to awaken again and again and again. And so it's this never ending journey, to be honest. But I think once you kind of go through it once, you know what to expect, the process, that right before your biggest manifestations come, you are tested in every dimension and direction. And then you elevate, and then you arrive there and you're like, I'm good. And then you're like, wait, never mind, I'm triggered again. And so that was a lot to describe, but I feel like we go through multiple in our lifetime. And I think it's also like through every season. And if you are someone where you have such big desires and big dreams and a big soul mission, you will be tested and you will have multiple. And that is what your soul chose.
Woo!
That was a lot.
I mean, preach! It was so good! Are you kidding me? I am like hanging on every word. I'm in a space now where I'm also saying, I'm welcoming triggers. I'm knowing that they're my teachers. And then I'm experiencing them. And like yesterday, I experienced it all day. And I was like, oh, I know it's happening. And I know it's going to be okay. But it's totally happening. I'm feeling triggered. And it's interesting because I had friends ask me about it. And then I didn't want to kind of get into it with them. And just to get like granular on like when you're going through something and it triggers you, because sometimes I feel like if I start talking about it, then there's like kind of a negative spiral. It's almost like I have to kind of keep it and process it myself. It's in order to rise above, because I was like, no, I have an interview with Karin tomorrow. I am not like gonna just like dive into this like dark place where I start like getting somebody else's opinion on what's triggering me. It's not going to trigger them the same way.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said this, because this is when I was saying like I'm having another spiritual awakening right now. It's exactly about that. I'm starting to realize that I cannot share everything with everyone, nor do I need to. And I'm someone where I like sharing. Like, I like the vulnerability. I love talking about my dreams and like what I'm working towards and my knowing, not to prove being like, I'm up here and I'm perfect. It's more of like, guys, like, this is something I feel and I think it's going to happen, and watch me make it happen. And if I can make it happen, then you can make it happen. So whatever so that's the intention.
Same.
However, I had this rude awakening recently where the moment that I started telling people my knowing, despite my reality not fully showing it, I felt it in my heart. Their fears, their projections, their doubts, their limitations were projected onto me. And then it was very hard for me to not absorb that energy. And what that really was like kind of like a mirror of my past self, where those fears and those doubts and limitations still existed. And I've kind of arrived at a place now where I was so, I don't want to say I was out of alignment, because we always, like, not always, but if you're walking in in this world, like in the spiritual that we are, we're never off the wrong path. We're always on the right path. We might sway a little bit. And I found myself being pulled in these directions that weren't mine. And it showed me, you know what? I don't need to take that energy, and it's okay for me to be triggered. I was meant to be triggered to like reveal that darkness and transmute it and transform it. But it really taught me an important lesson of, you know, a lot of people are operating on those fears, those doubts and limitations. And sometimes keeping it to yourself is the greatest gift you can give to yourself, because it kind of brings you back. Like, I felt like I was being pulled backwards. And now I'm kind of just keeping this, whatever my knowing is, whether it's in my career, in my dreams, love, whatever, to myself and God, and keeping that so sacred. And then kind of letting the 3D world, once it catches up, be the proof of itself. And then I can tell the story of, like, yeah, I always knew that would happen. So that's the biggest lesson I've learned, because there's also a lot of evil eye energy, right? Like, we think that everyone wants the best for us. We think that everyone wants us to succeed. And I think deep down they do, but their human ego gets in the way of that. And sometimes we just need to really protect our peace.
Like you said, you are a sharer. Like you like lay it all out on the page so specifically, even, which I love. And I think what you just did with the timeline on your Substack about your screenplay was such magic. It was potent magic. How did you come up with these little moments? So, okay, for the listeners, it'll be linked in the show notes. Like, go read this journey because it's so good. It does start in a dark place. And then you have this vision of seeing yourself accept an Oscar for best screenplay. I cannot wait to be cheering you on from my couch. No. But you see it, and then when you do your acceptance speech, you see all of the older versions of yourself like cheering you on and knowing that you had to go through all of those to get to this place. But then the through line of the whole piece is that when you want something, the universe will conspire to make it happen. Oh, it's just so good. It makes you like walk through the day. I read through that on Friday, and all weekend I was like, the universe. I spent some time by the lake on Friday night, and I was like, do I need a lake house? I was like, the universe is gonna conspire to help me get a lake house.
Oh my God, it's my favorite story to tell because it's so magical. It's just the craziest adventure I've ever been on. So I'll go back to the beginning. So I was describing how in October of 2023, I had my spiritual awakening. I was ready to give up. Then I started writing the book. I finished writing the book in probably February, but by January, I was pretty much done with my second book, Unlimited Power Within You. So at this point, I had all this wisdom. I knew divine timing. I knew God's ways and whatever. Then I had a really bad flare-up in January. And again, I was just like, I don't know why this is still my
It's
life.
like, feels like all your flare-ups are like, you have something else to create. You need to create something else. Time to start writing again.
I know. So every day I would be praying like, God, please heal me. And then in January, I just one day prayed differently. And I said, God, I don't need you to heal me right now, but I need you to give me hope that one day you will. And then the turn of events. So I was sent to Atlanta for work. I work in advertising, and I was going there for a shoot. And I remember the first day I got on set, my role was pretty minimal. Like I literally just had to check off the shots that we were taking, and they were paying like $5,000 for me to be there. So I was like, why am I here? Like, not that I was upset by it, but it was one of those like, I remember just walking back to my hotel and thinking like, I don't know why you brought me here, God, but I know it's for a reason. And then the following morning, I'm doing the same meditation that I've been doing for years, and it was a Joe Dispenza. And all of a sudden, I have this profound visual of me sitting in the audience at the Oscars, hearing my name, walking up, accepting the award, seeing all past versions of myself in the audience, giving the speech. And what was so insane about this meditation was it wasn't just this like really cool visual. It was a somatic experience where my body felt as though I was in that audience, heard my name, walked on stage. So my heart was beating fast. I was crying. It was like my nervous system was all over the place, but in a really beautiful way. And then I got out of that meditation and I was like, what the was that? Like, that was insane. But I also knew that the idea of my first book came to me in a meditation. The idea of my second book came to me in meditation. The idea of me going to wellness resorts to teach workshops were in a meditation. So I kind of had this knowing like something is here. And then the day goes on and I realize, wait a minute, I'm now on a film set with directors and producers with camera and equipment. Like, what are the odds of that? And then it was like this adventure where all of a sudden, I'm being guided to write a screenplay. But I love film. I always have loved film. But like, I don't know anything about film. I've never read a screenplay. I don't know anything about the industry. I'm not good enough for that. I'm not creative enough. I can't do that with this body. But then it was like, all of a sudden, all these synchronicities and signs where I would walk to work and then I would take a different way and I would stumble upon a film set. Or I got an email from my building. I live in New Jersey, so they don't film a lot of stuff here. And I got an email from my building that they're filming It Ends With Us on my block for 3 weeks. And so every day I would go after work, I would walk around and I'm like seeing the whole situation unfold. And then it was like randomly meeting directors and producers, and Shonda Rhimes posted my passage on her story. And then it was like, I was at my brother's wedding and we were taking pictures at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and randomly we met this Emmy award-winning producer, and then I see him again at a restaurant in New York City 4 months later, and it was just like, you can't make this shit up kind of thing. But
Did
then
you talk to him at that restaurant? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I
I
never
was like,
went to him.
I know, I was wondering, but I know you felt it as a sign, and I was like, did she? I feel like I had so many follow-ups to this because I know you did like little blurbs. I was like, okay, I'm so glad I get to ask you.
Since I even wrote that like I can't wait to, I'm like waiting to write it part 2. But long story short, in about like few months after that meditation, I started to just listen to interviews of directors and of writers, and I started to watch more films, and I started to research a little bit more. And the best way I could describe it was like, anytime I stepped my foot into the film world, I felt a lot of joy. There wasn't fear. It was more of like, wait, this is exciting. Like, I felt like a little girl, like exploring a playground. I was like, oh my God, like what else is there? And who else? And I also saw myself in a lot of those artists and those creatives, like the way they thought, the way an idea would come, the way they would write. And then one thing led to another, where one day I just started a note on my phone and I started dropping in ideas and lines, and I didn't know what I was writing or what I was being led to write. And anytime I would doubt myself, another sign would show or another confirmation would show. And I just one day said yes to it. And then I started writing, and it was like more signs and more synchronicities. But the beautiful aspect of all of this, 2 things. One, the prayer that it started with was like, God, I don't need you to heal me right now, but I need you to give me hope that one day you will. A year after after this whole journey, I finished writing it in March or April. That was truly when the physical healing like kind of came to a close. And like, it was like, I have flare-ups here and there, but it was honestly like this past spring is when I had that download, and it was through truly writing the screenplay. It's about my life and these really powerful spiritual themes that I healed. Like, that's where the healing journey. So I had to go through it in that way. And then the second, it really taught me this in the most fun way. You create your reality. And so every day was filled with so much magic, so much wonder. And also, all of those signs and synchronicities that came truly were like just me following those nudges, like go here, do this, reach out to this person, say that. And then that's how it all happened. So it really just gave me proof, like if I can create that entire adventure and now be at a place where I finished the screenplay, I'm starting to pitch it. I met Sofia Coppola on the street 2 months ago. And like, if I can create that when it comes to this silly little project, just imagine what else I can create when I truly believe in myself. And I will say the doubts, the fears, the limitations, that was all part of the plan. So had I not doubted, I wouldn't be here in this way. And I think that also taught me a really beautiful lesson, because I know it's so hard when we're creating something, we're going after a dream. Like we want those doubts to just quiet and to go away, but that is part of you learning to trust yourself. And so without the doubt, you wouldn't build that trust muscle. And now I'm at a place where it's like, I said I was going to write a screenplay and I did, and it's amazing. What else can I do? So, and long story short, I wrote a Substack of like the year journey of like the date, like each date and timestamp of like, this is what happened and this is what happened and this is what happened. So it's a really fascinating story.
It's so good. I love it. I can't wait for part 2. And also just like as a creative, just seeing the creative process too, how the creative process was linked. Like you had this like, we'll call her like a mentor that you connected with that was helping you a little bit with screenwriting. She was a screenwriter and you were helping her as an author. And then you like sat next to her on the plane after you changed your flight.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And like learn a different program to use. Like that is so good. It's just, it's magic. Yeah. It's all such magic. I love it.
And like going back to that girl, so long story short, I met this girl online. She lived in LA. I lived in New Jersey. She was a screenwriter, wanted to be an author. I was an author wanting to be a screenwriter. And so we connected online. And then randomly I was flying back from like LA to New York. I moved my flight last minute, and then I get on the flight and she's sitting right next to me. And on that flight, she was working on her book. I was working on the screenplay. And the beautiful part about all of this is I helped her get published. So now she's a published author, and her book is coming out next year. And so and the whole premise of the title of the film is walking each other home. And so even the journey I was on was literally proof of the film that I was being guided to write. So,
I freaking just got chills. I love it. It's so good. Okay. So you talk a lot about meditation. And I went back to your subject because I feel like I read this a long time ago on your subject, and then I couldn't find it. But I read a subject of yours a long time ago that said you had a conversation with yourself during meditation. It was like you were having, and you were normalizing the conversation you were having with yourself. And I swear, this is so crazy. I couldn't find it. I still couldn't. I like went because I also got distracted because every time I started reading something, I can't stop reading something that you wrote. So then I was like, we're hours later, and I was like, I'm just gonna talk to her about it. But you wrote that you like heard it was your voice, but it was you were having a conversation with God, but it's like really your voice in your head, and that helped me so much. Meditation, like that transformed how I meditate. I was like, oh no, I can just have a conversation with myself because this is normal. Because, I feel like everyone's meditation practice, people say they're getting downloads or messages, but just getting really granular into what that exactly feels like and sounds like is like that's what you do so well. And you also, among many other things, but you also just like, it's so real and raw, and it feels like I was like, oh, that is my experience too. That's what's happening to me. So can you talk to me about meditation? Because like you do Joe Dispenza's, you do guided meditations, and then you also sit in silence, or just give me everything.
Yeah. I love that you brought this up, because I'm writing my 3rd book right now about this topic of how our souls speak to us, how to just decipher God's voice, your intuitive voice, your ego's voice. Like that has been the bane of my existence.
You're not alone.
But like also the most juicy experiences.
Yes.
So I do a lot, honestly. Like I kind of dabble. For me, my meditation in the morning is the most important, and I will never not do it. Like even I was at a bachelorette 2 weeks ago, and even on the bachelorette, partying and whatever, I was like, I'm still going to meditate for 35 minutes in the morning.
You wake up
That's the
hungover
greatest.
and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I'm disciplined like this.
I'm impressed. I'm
Yeah.
impressed.
Honestly, I was really proud of myself.
Yeah.
So I do my Joe Dispenza 35-minute morning gratitude. It's on YouTube. I honestly think it's a bootleg, but it works, so whatever.
Yeah. Count
Um,
it.
and then I kind of like find random ones, honestly, on YouTube, on Spotify, and whatnot. And then I think lately what I've been loving is like going on a walk without my phone and just like observing the voice in my mind. And I ask myself two questions that really allow me to access my higher self. The first one is, what is the truth of this experience? And instantly, whatever answer it is, I take that as the truth, because usually it's either like tough love or coming from a very pure, peaceful place, not like the anxious, frazzled, confused, doubting mind. And then the second question I ask is like, I imagine my higher self next to me. And when I say higher self, I mean like the version of me who has the things that I want, whether it's the partnership, the New York Times best-selling title, like the version of me who's quit corporate America and like is fully following her mission. And I'll ask her like, what would you do in this moment or in this experience? Or how should I navigate this? Or what should I do? And usually that's the immediate guidance that I receive. And it's always coming from this like embodied, magnetic, aligned, authentic self. So that's kind of a little tool that I've been using recently, which isn't while I'm sitting, laying down, eyes closed. It's like literally in my waking life. Even when I'm like out to dinner with friends and someone triggers me, I like pause. I'm like, okay, what is the truth? And like I'll ask myself, and usually the answer is like, don't listen. They're projecting, or there's something there that you need to explore, or whatever it is. However, I think that the most profound downloads I get is really when I'm deep in the subconscious mind. And so that is when I meditate in the mornings, when I do a breathwork journey. I think was it a breathwork journey that you're referring to where like,
Maybe.
I don't know, it was like recent, but I had a visual of like me speaking to Jesus, and like all of this information came through that was so profound that I could not logically make up. And I was in a deep, deep breathwork journey where I felt like an out of body experience. I literally like saw myself from the third person, and I'm still deciphering what that meant. And I think every time I trust that guidance, it always ends up being true. The hard part, though, that I'm learning more and more, and this is really like the mission I have with this third book, is to like unravel the truth here, is we all receive these downloads. We all hear these voices, the parent within us, the wisdom within us, yet our reality doesn't reflect it. And that's when we start to doubt our knowing. That's when we start questioning, wait, whose voice was that? Was that real? Was it God's? Was it my ego? Was it my mom's? Was it the world's? Was that true? And then we start doubting. We start saying things like, I don't know if I could trust myself, or what is my knowing? Do I know? Can I know? What do I know? And then we go into this spiral. And that spiral is intentional, because that is how you build your faith in yourself, in God. And I will say, over the years, I've had such profound downloads that even the meditation, right, with the screenplay, like that was a vision that came from God himself. I doubted it, but now here I am, finished with the screenplay. And so for me, the meditation is really a practice that I create so much time and space for, so that I understand, how does my soul even sound? So that when I'm in my waking day, I can clearly decipher in my mind, especially when I have a lot of thoughts, like which one is my soul speaking and which is my ego or my anxious voice, my limited mindset, my old self. And having that distinction brings me a little bit more peace. But I think that's the journey of like really learning how to trust yourself. And for me, one thing that's also I'm learning too is to not overdo it. Like I sometimes when I'm feeling I'm in a funk, I'm spiraling, I like double down on the meditations and I do more hypnosis and I do more breath works. But the place in which it's coming from is actually coming from lack because I'm trying to force the download. I'm trying to force the knowing, trying to force the stillness when that actually causes more turbulence because then there's so many voices. I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck to believe
Oh
anymore.
my gosh, yes.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
No, that's so interesting. I'm first can't wait for your third book, but also so you start with the Joe Dispenza, and then like when you're reaching the subconscious, is it silent?
I really do focus on my breathing to
Okay.
really not think. Like, and of course thoughts will come like, oh, like what should I wear today? Or like
Right.
what time should I like stupid things like that.
Yeah.
And I'll just focus on my breath and focus on my breath. And it's the most powerful meditations I have are when I'm focusing fully on my breath and nothing else. And then like clockwork, a visual will drop in or I will hear a voice or like I'll get a phrase or I'll hear something say like, today go do this. And then I'll listen to it. The times where I'm like trying to force the answer, it never serves me. And I think that's the difference that I'm learning right now is like am I conjuring some of these? Am I making some of this up because I want something out of it or like what really does feel divinely led? And I think that's the difference that I'm kind of learning, but it's really in that moment of surrender, which we've all experienced, right? Like the moment you let go of anything, that's when the answer comes. That's when the person comes, the email, the opportunity, whatever it is. So even with the meditation, and that's a muscle you need to build. And of course I have days where my mind is going in a million directions and I can't focus, but even the simple act of me showing up to me is sacred in and of itself.
Oh, it's so good. I lay with my 4-year-old when he goes to bed sometimes. And I have found that space, like I don't bring my phone in there. And he's going to sleep. Sometimes I rub his back a little bit, but I found that like that kind of like sets me into this. And that's where I had the idea for the Woo Report. Really came
I love
laying
that.
next to him. But it all started because I wanted to produce a podcast for someone else because I never thought about putting myself in this seat before because I've always been behind the camera and that felt safe and good. But it's interesting like where things can come up. I literally want to never stop talking to you, but I want to be so aware of our time. There's one question which we really didn't touch on at all, but I'm curious what you think about it that I've been asking everyone because I had this near-death experience. And so I'm asking everyone what they think happens when we die.
Oh my God, that's a big question.
It's a big question. I'm just curious what you think. It doesn't have to be like long and just can be, I don't know.
I think we return home and it's the most peaceful place. But I do believe in reincarnation and I think our souls choose this body, this lifetime for a reason. And I think there's a lot of old souls. I feel like I'm one of them. I feel like I'm on my last lifetime, which is why I'm showing up in this way and like why this is my journey. But I think we return home to like the essence of what we are, which is love. I think it's like the human world is filled with suffering intentionally. Like that is part of the dynamic. But when we do this inner work, we realize like deep, deep, deep down, we are created on the foundation of love and that is who we are. And I think that's the hardest part to kind of arrive at in this human lifetime. Like only a select few will ever kind of reach that enlightenment stage and maintain it. So I think we just return back to the essence of who we are, which is that divine love. But I don't know. It's a big question. What do
It's
you
a big question. It keeps evolving, but I do think we kind of like we slip through the veil. Like our body dies, but we slip through this veil. And I agree. Like I think we do go home. I think we go back to a place where we want to go, and then we like look at our lives, and then we come back and do it again and try and up level and
Yeah.
making our way back.
I know. It's so magical.
Oh my gosh. And so are you. This was
Likewise. I'm so happy you did this. You are a natural.
Oh my gosh, thank
Once you
you.
start doing TBM, you're gonna understand deeper like why you felt called to do this.
Oh my gosh.
It's gonna take a turn. Like just get ready, dear media.
Oh my
Love
gosh.
man.
Oh my gosh, I'm coming. Can I come in? I'd like to come in. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing this. I'm just so happy to
Thank
know
you.
you. I can't wait to keep diving into all the things that you have written and will write. And just
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. For way more woo-woo, please follow and subscribe to the Woo Report podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you love to listen. Never miss an episode of the Woo Report by joining the community at thewooreportpodcast.com. Thank you for liking, sharing, rating, and loving on this little slice of magic. I am so grateful you are here. Bye.